The core aspects of Techfugees is really driven by the spirit of people and organizations coming together. That is what not only creates the solidarity within our global community, but also draws magnetism to other organizations to come together.
Welcome to episode 2 of season 4 of Starts at the Top, our podcast about leadership, digital culture and change. I'm Paul Thomas.
And I'm Zoe Amma. Our podcast brings you interviews with leaders from the public, private and third sector who are using digital to navigate uncertainty and forge a path to the future. In this episode, we talk to Burman, CEO, and Nowar Rahmouni of Techfugees. We hear from Raj about Techfugees' mission and progress, and then from Nowar about how she embraced that mission, how she works with Techfugees, and where the charity has taken her career. Before we get into that, though, we just wanted to briefly chat through some of the latest developments in tech that have been on our radar this week. And obviously the big story this week, again, has very much been about Facebook. And whilst we don't want to turn this podcast into the anti-Facebook podcast, there certainly have been a lot of news stories about the platform this week, partly because the whistleblower Frances Haugen was appearing in front of the committee who are looking at the online safety bill at the moment, which is currently being scrutinised by Parliament. And what was really interesting about that was that I hadn't actually realised that Facebook's ownership is structured so that Zuckerberg and I think a small circle of people around him have a special type of share so that they actually have a huge amount of control over the business. So that was a really interesting revelation that came out of that appearance before the committee this week, which I didn't know about previously, and says something about the culture and the distribution of power in the platform.
You know, it's the decision-making processes as well, isn't it? It's all the power in the hands of one man. And that is even more worrying when you sort of look at the number of big tech organizations that are taking control of the way that we pass information backwards and forwards to each other on the internet. And it's a constant worry. But I guess the biggest reflection I have on it is I'm 99% sure that I should delete my Facebook account, but my wife already did that with hers, and so there's those sort of times during the working week where she'll ask me to check something on Facebook because she can't any longer, and that's really the only reason I have any access to it. But it does start to make you think about the platforms that you're using day in, day out, how you use them, and how you feel about using them, I guess, is probably where my head is this week. I've had a really changing relationship with social media. My background and where I've worked before, I've played a really visible and leading role in encouraging people towards these platforms. And I sort of noticed about probably 5 or 6 years ago when I stood up in front of rooms full of people talking about the virtues of being on these platforms as a person in business and why you should invest in your personal brand, why you should do all these things. A nagging sense of, but do I really believe that that's the best thing for us? And you sort of see people that completely abstain from social media. Oh, no, I don't do that. I don't go on those channels at all. And it doesn't interest me. And it does start to make you wonder about the time that you sink into the platforms, how you engage with them, and just what the net result of that is for you and for your life and for your business, perhaps if you use it for work, but also the pockets that you're lining. So it's really forced me to sort of face my my sort of social media demons and look at them long and hard. And I'm not going to be ashamed to admit that I still haven't quite made the decisions that I think I need to make around those. So how are you feeling about all of this? So what's it making you think about?
I think the irony for all of us working in digital is that we're often so busy advising people about how they can improve their own digital presences. We probably don't spend enough time on our own. So I absolutely feel like I do have days where I'm it's too busy to go on social media, despite advising people they should always make time to go on social media. Yeah. So I do feel a bit guilty about that. There are some platforms where I feel that I've got even more out of them over the last few years. So I actually really like LinkedIn because it's a network for professionals and nerds. And I do feel safe on there as well. You don't seem to get as much trolling on that platform. So I have a renewed affection for that. But certainly for other platforms, my relationship with them has very much shifted. So going back 7-8 years, I used to be on Facebook absolutely all the time. But now, a bit like you, I only go on there when I really have to. And what I've also done as well is because I'm in quite a lot of private groups covering things like parenting and house renovations and other, kind of like not very rock and roll interests. What I've done is I've just set up notifications so I just can see what's happening with those groups when I go into Facebook. I really only go in there for that purpose. And I think it's really confused the algorithm, to be honest, because when I look at the algorithm of the main feed, it no longer seems to know what to serve to me, and it's become far less all powerful and far less useful because it's just serving me random bits of content. So there you go. Maybe that is a sign that once people start to use the platform in different ways, it's perhaps not quite the all-seeing tool that Zuckerberg thinks it is.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience with Twitter, where I have my sort of regular group of cronies on Twitter, but whereas I used to sort of put stuff out there about the work that I was doing, I don't so much anymore because I reserve that for LinkedIn. It's where I get most engagement around the work that I'm doing. It's where I've been winning work and where I can talk about my work in safety, as you said. I mean, there's very little trolling on there that I've encountered, although I know it does go on. It's very, very little that I've encountered. Whereas Twitter seems to have forgotten who I am. Or it's learning that the other me is more interested in football and TV and news and cinema and all that sort of stuff, and not the business side of me. So I do have to work extra hard to see the content that I probably should be engaging more with on Twitter than the content that I actually am being served up. And I think some of the changes that Twitter has made along the way as well have sort of left me slightly behind on it. So I feel a little bit sad about that because I've always been a massive champion for Twitter and what it can bring. And I think in its best world, and I think I see a lot of this still happening on there, there are certain communities that are very, very, very well served by Twitter. I think for me, it's more of a sort of an information source than a place that I want to spend a massive amount of time. But just quickly before we go into the interview, what does that mean to the way that you're advising your clients on how to use these channels?
I still think you need to be on them. I was talking to charity about this last week actually, and I was saying to them, well, the thing is you do still need to be in the room, don't you? Otherwise people are going to be on those platforms talking about you and you're not part of the conversation. I would always rather be part of the conversation than not be in the room. So I think definitely still have and develop and invest in being on those platforms, but also look at where you need to manage risk as well. And I wrote a piece with Charity Digital about that the other week, which I can add in the show notes, but also try and get people onto your own channels as well. So whether that is your email newsletter, whether that's having a really great blog on your website. God, I feel like I'm going back to 2005 giving people this advice, but maybe that's the place where we all need to set our time machines to now.
Well, yeah, I mean, just sort of thinking back to those times, there was all the discussion about, writing your thoughts in a box and sharing it on the internet. It was as simple as that, wasn't it, really? Blogging culture has sort of come back. Podcasting culture, as we well know, is starting to seep in. So people are finding other ways of getting their thoughts out there in sort of longer formats, I guess. And maybe we're sort of using social media in a different way. It's something that I would be fascinated, actually, if anyone's listening to this who works in psychology, it would be really great to have a conversation about the sort of the changing habits and where we're getting to. But it's all of the Facebook stuff has just really shone a light on why am I using this? What am I using it for? And who's benefiting? If I'm not benefiting, then I shouldn't be there. And if somebody like Mark Zuckerberg is constantly benefiting from my use of the platform, then do I want to go and spend my time somewhere else? Anyway, if that's enough of that, then we can move on to our interview.
Yeah, so just very, very briefly, something I just wanted to mention before we do that. Obviously, another big development that's going on this week in the news is COP is going to be kicking off over the next few days in Glasgow. And I saw a really interesting question on Twitter this week related to that. You see, I can't stay away from the platform, about the environmental impact of hybrid working. And that's not something I've seen a lot of resources out there covering. I imagine it's a very new area to be doing research in. But I was just going to say to any of our listeners, if that's something that you are looking at or you have seen any useful research on, do drop us a line, do tweet us at starts at the top, because we would really like to find out a bit more about the developments in that area.
Yeah, I saw one really interesting thing about organisations who are going for zero carbon emissions and how that completely shifts towards being able to vouch for your employees, that your employees have green energy tariffs, aren't using more electricity, more fossil fuels than they would be in the office environment. So there's a great shift there coming. So it'd be great to hear from our listeners on that. And again, maybe we can get somebody on to help us explore that issue a bit more.
Yeah, I may have someone in mind for that for our next season.
Aha, sneaky. So now for our conversation with Raj and Nowar. And just a small heads up that Nowar joined us from the Lebanon, and the line was a bit sketchy in places. It took her a while to find a Wi-Fi connection that would actually hold up. In the end, we think we got there pretty well, but we really enjoyed our conversation with Raj and Nowar from Techfugees, and we hope you do so too.
So we are very excited to welcome to Start at the Top today two very special guests. Raj Burman is the CEO of Techfugees, a global impact organisation empowering inclusion and dignity for those displaced with responsible digital innovations. He is a fellow of the Institute of Enterprise and Entrepreneurship with over 3 decades of international experience scaling high-growth ventures across the private, public and non-profit sectors, working at the intersection of ICT, digital innovation and entrepreneurship. As an investor, he's successfully established several disruptive digital tech startups and led the UK Business Acceleration Scale Up programme for an independent body of the European Commission. So we're very pleased to be joined by Raj, and we are also joined by Nowar Rahmouni. She is a business and communications professional. She leads the Spark Alumni Network. And as well as being a very talented documentary maker and researcher, she's also a social media and community building coordinator at Techfugees Lebanon, where she's dialing in from today. She's also an articles writer, and her work has been shown in Al Fanar Media, also for Techfugees and the Al Akbar newspaper. She's a female entrepreneur and the founder of Ghana Halabi. Nowar and Raj, we are so pleased to have you here today. Welcome to Starts at the Top.
Thank you, Zoe. Great introduction. Delighted to be here.
Great.
Thank you, Zoe. It's a pleasure being with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. Paul and I are absolutely delighted that you're both here. And one of the reasons why we are especially pleased to be having this conversation right now is that clearly we've had the whole issue of refugees and some of the key things that we really need to discuss as a society around that very much being in news with the big story about Afghanistan over the last few weeks. And that very much prompted us to get in touch with you guys at Techfugees. This is an issue which I have a very personal connection with. So I'm actually the child of a refugee, and I'm a great believer of the incredible resilience, the incredible creativity, and also the innovation that just goes hand in hand with being someone who comes to another country and has to shape a whole life there. So we're absolutely delighted to be talking to you both today, and we're excited to be digging into some of the issues around that. So Raj, could we start with you? I wonder whether perhaps you want to kick off saying a little bit about what Techfugee is and what it does.
Yeah, absolutely, Zoe. As you say, the refugee crisis has hit the headlines now. What is really amazing that every 10 seconds, one person on the planet is being displaced, and it's an astonishing number. Currently 1% of humanity, that's roughly about 80 million, just over 82 million people on the planet are displaced. And you know what? It's forecasted to grow to over 1 billion people within the next 3 decades because of climate change being a catalyst. So as you see, we've got the ongoing pandemic crisis, we've got the refugee crisis. And so, our landscape is changing. And what we need to do is to create a paradigm shift that changes the old ways of traditional styles of leadership, which is really about managing for results and kind of driving shareholder value and profit, to kind of reimagine new ways and better ways for us to kind of create the conditions for working together, for people to come together and organizations to come together to create positive outcomes to support those people who are displaced. I'm very fortunate to be chief exec for Techfugees, which is a role I've entered since November of 2020. I'm a refugee. I come from a family of refugees, so this topic is very dear to my heart. And so, what really drives us as an organization is that we are an international nonprofit that actually brings together our partners, our volunteers, and the digital tech sector really to empower displaced inclusion with responsible digital innovations. We've got an amazing collective of organizations and people working together, looking at how technology and innovations can be harnessed to provide equitable access for refugees and displaced people to have equitable access to information, education, health, work, and their integration within society. So yeah, that's what we do at Techfugees.
Fantastic, thank you. And when we first connected about servant leadership and why you think this is such an important skill for leaders to develop, can you tell us a bit about what that is and why it matters so much?
Absolutely. The 20th century was very much based around management for driving shareholder value and results and profit. That is still very much relevant today. But in the new world that we live in, the aspects of servant leadership, so it's moving the paradigm that it's focusing rather than about me, it's about we. And so it's as a CEO of an international collective, most of my role is primarily listening to people. It's about the sharing the power and control with our global community to work with refugees on the ground, to curate solutions in a collective way with partners and organizations to actually make a difference to people's lives. I think, given where we are as a society, that we're all digitally connected, but also living in a climate-stricken world. Basically, the real opportunity is how the commercial sector, which embraces, you could say, traditional styles of leadership in driving profit and shareholder value, is much more resonant to working with organizations like ourselves, which is much more people-centric and driven by core values of empathy and humility to kind of embrace the duty of care towards the people that we work with. So yeah, we're very excited and we're seeing some amazing opportunities working with our partners and our organizations. But the nature of displacement is not decreasing, unfortunately, it's proliferating. So we do need more hands on the deck, and we've got an exciting journey ahead working with some amazing organizations and people to make a difference.
This is so interesting, Raj, because there's something here, isn't there, about how all those traditional styles of leadership that you mentioned probably have their roots back in the 1950s and some of the thinking and frameworks that were developed then. But as you say now, especially with organizational hierarchies and power dynamics shifting, particularly in this age of working more globally, more collectively, and hybrid working as well, then that model really needs to be disrupted, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, history has taught us, Zoe, as you know, when people come together and become united, big changes happen. We've seen that. I mean, my heritage of my family are originally from India, and so my family were part of the freedom fighting movement of the Indian freedom movement. We've seen walls getting broken down within Europe. And so, what we're seeing, particularly within Techfugees, which is one of the reasons what really excites me, is how people can come together. And it's our small united actions together as a collective, working together, that actually can foster big change. And so, at the end of the day, what we're doing is bringing those collective hands together in a lending way to help those who have fallen. And when I look at Techfugees and what we try to do, and look at how we can represent ourselves, the best way I could describe ourselves is in 10 words. We have 10 fingers which embrace the way we do things, and those 10 words are essentially is together we can empower displaced inclusion with responsible digital tech. And with those words and our values, that's what actually draws magnetism with the thought leaders and the change in direction to work with people to make a difference.
I really like that idea of magnetism, bringing people with you, engaging people. And that's everything that I think servant leadership is. It's interesting. I'm doing a piece of work this morning around a big organization looking to do a big digital transformation project. And when they break down organizational capabilities, one of the capabilities that's really important to them is agility, agile behavior, agile ways of working, agile methodology, all of that. And servant leadership is one of the skills that they are investing in their people, particularly around leadership, to make sure that spirit that you talk about is ingested into big corporate organization. So just interesting context there as well, perhaps.
Absolutely, Paul. And I want to share, the practical aspects of servant leadership in terms of what Techfugees have done. At the height of the pandemic, giving you some concrete examples here. When the pandemic happened, there's a couple of initiatives the community got together. They wanted to understand how COVID-19 was impacting the displaced communities worldwide. And over a very short time frame, they developed a platform, an online platform, which basically brought together both top-down data sets as much as bottom-up, data sets coming from the ground, people going into the refugee camps, talking to people, how COVID is impacting, and bringing that data to the forefront. And they brought that in a digital way and represent that as a global map, basically, so you can see where the hotspots of how COVID-19 was impacting the community worldwide. And that's really insightful of how quickly, a community can come together to make a difference. Now, the outcome of that is that we had a very specific initiative in Kenya, in Kakuma Kalabay refugee camp, which is home to about well over 200,000 refugees and displaced people there. We worked with refugees in that camp, and at the height of the pandemic last year, there was a real need to bring together emergency alerts to help the people on the ground. So what we did was our team over there in the camps, they worked together with the Kenyan Red Cross, together with Google, together with Oracle, and a couple of other partners to basically very quickly create another e-health solution, basically to help the refugees to get those emergency alerts and get treated in time. So these are just some of the examples of how we can come together as quickly and how the aspects of servant leadership can actually drive the results and create the right conditions for people to create positive outcomes.
Before we dive in and speak to Nowar in a second, but Techfugees has a really decentralized approach, and you've already mentioned some of the refugee camps and places you work. How many countries is Techfugees actually in and impacting at the moment?
Yeah, great question. So when we started back in 2015, Techfugees grew very rapidly within the course of a fortnight. We had presence in, I think, about 40 countries at its high point. Now, managing that real estate was quite a challenge, being a lean organization. So what we had to do since the time I came on board was kind of look at the mapping that to the current issues of the displacement hotspots. So today we're in 8 countries. 4 of them are in the Middle East and African region. So we're in Lebanon, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, working with refugees in the camps and also helping them to uplift to education and health content. And we're doing e-commerce, helping women in Nigeria to Shopify themselves and creating an international digital corridor for remote working for these refugees. The upside is that we want to create a pathway for these individuals to participate in the digital economy. And so we are also present in Canada, where the team over there are helping them to create pathways for affordable housing, which is one of the big issues. We're also in the UK, in Germany, France. We're helping women, refugees to get access to digital jobs, helping entrepreneurs who are refugee-led to kind of help them with their setting up their businesses. So essentially allowing them to get access to information as they move towards migration and their settlement towards, as part of their safe passage towards that. So that's where we are at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's so great to hear about what Techfugees does and the impact that it's having. It's super. So we're going to dive into this a bit more now, and I'm going to turn to Nowar. Nowar, we're so pleased you're here today. We would love to hear how you came to be a Techfugees volunteer.
Yes, hello Zoe, and hello Paul and Raj. First of all, let me share this short story about how I became a volunteer with Techfugees. I still remember when I graduated from the Lebanese International University, I was asking myself, what's next? You know that we are Syrians and we live in Lebanon and we don't have any right to work and so on. And we need to gain some experiences. So I still remember that I attended a session that given by someone named Ahmed Soufiane Bayram. And Ahmed Soufiane Bayram is a trainer and he is a volunteer with Techfugees. So he was sharing his story about how he became the person who is today. So I still remember that he was sharing his story and I was seeing my memories while he's sharing his story. So I noticed that it's not about someone's story, it's about the Syrians I'm speaking here. We are sharing the same story or the same memories, especially after the war in Syria. And he just like inspired me to start working on my skills and my experiences. And he gave me that hint to develop my skills. If you want to know where you are going, you need to start volunteer to just like to search the strengths that you have and the weaknesses that you have and work on them to develop your skills and so on. So this is how I start. I still remember that I made some research about Ahmed Soufiane Bayram, and I found that he is a volunteer with Techfugees, and I just write a message for Techfugees on their website, and I notify them that I would like to become a volunteer with you in Lebanon chapter. Quickly, Louise contacted me and linked me with the leader here in Lebanon, Harut. And Harut contacted me and told me everything about Techfugees. And he mentioned that being a volunteer means to work without not without any giving back. So I said yes, I don't want anything from you. I just want to work on my skills and to give more, maybe while contacting with people and having some links, you can develop your skills. And this is how I start with Techfugees. And quickly the global team in Techfugees start working on my skills, and they learn me or teach me how to become a communicator and how to build a community. And now I'm the communicator here in Lebanon chapter, and we are working so hard with the other Syrians after became just like and a good example for other Syrians here in Lebanon. You know, when we are sharing the same story and the same memories and finding good example that standing in front of us, we are trying to just doing the same that they did. So like I inspired by someone else, I'm now working as an inspirational person to other Syrians here in Lebanon.
Fantastic. And you remind me of the way that you are juggling so many different plates and wearing lots of different hats and doing all these amazing things, of that resilience that refugees have. And we'll come onto that in a moment. But is there anything that you'd like to share about what you're currently working on right now?
Yes, like you mentioned in the introduction that I'm multitask. While I was trying to find my strengths, I worked in many different fields to find my weaknesses and strengths. And I found myself finally that I'm writing articles to inspire other people and sharing stories. Besides being an entrepreneur, that I have my own business now, so I can share that with the Syrian community here that are not allowed to work because of the law here in Lebanon. So I inspired them about how to build their own business or small business. I'm also an article writer, like I mentioned before. So I'm sharing some stories that inspired them, because you know that being a multitask giving you lots of experiences. So you can share those experiences with other communities or other people to lead them to the right track, to not wasting time like how you waste your time while trying to find your way. So yes, I'm working in this with Techfugees and other NGOs, just like you mentioned before in Spark Alumni Network. I'm trying to lead the community as a good example to them that there's nothing impossible. Change is possible. And we only need just like inspirational speaker people to motivate us to keep our hard works and to inspire other people also, just like how we inspired by others. And in this way, we can continue working on our skills and to develop our skills and to inspire others. And, it's just like a sustainable circle here for the Syrian community or the refugees in general.
Absolutely. And all those personal qualities that you described there, Nowar, of resilience and creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship and being a fast learner, those are all qualities that I've seen in my mother, which I think are very much down to the experiences that formed her. And in your work with other refugees, do you think are those qualities that you've also seen in other people who also experience being displaced? And are there any others that you would add to that list?
Yes, you have no idea how you can be surprised by how talented they are. I still remember that I from a while I was looking for someone, an Arabic speaker, Arabic native speaker, and we have two accents here, the formal one and informal one. So I was trying hard to find a good speaker, and I found a female refugee here who is very talented, not only with the speaking in Arabic language, the official language. She has that way to, like, while she's speaking, you can imagine the whole conversation in your head. She's unbelievable. I've never heard someone just like her. So yes, you can, while working with refugees, you get surprised by there is lots of talents around, but there is no one that trying to find them or trying to lead them to the right track or trying to work on their skills. And I think that this is my job here with Techfugees, to find those talented and put them in the right track, to link them with the right market or the right places that they are looking for, to become a good example for other community also or other people. So yes, working with refugees is something, I don't know how can I describe this, but it's something fabulous. Knowing those people and knowing how they are working and how talented they are and how they can inspire you at the same way that you are inspiring them. So yes, you have to maybe deal with some refugees around to know or to understand more how I feel, or the whole experience that I gain. It's all because of them, not because of myself or because only the organization, because the organization gave me this opportunity to deal with refugees, and this is how I gained my experiences.
There's a wonderful circle there, because I really like the idea that you heard your story through the voice of another, and now you're probably doing the same for a whole other generation and group of refugees yourself.
Yes, like I mentioned, it's just like a sustainable circle, like giving and taking all the time from people. It's like networking, dealing with people, with real people around.
Fantastic, thank you. So I wanted to pick up on a theme from the previous conversation that we had earlier. So we've talked about collective action and how Techfugees enables that to happen. And I know central to this is a real philosophy around human-centered design and empathy. So Raj, can you tell us a bit more about what that looks like on the ground and how you foster that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to your early conversation of what Nowar mentioned. It's about a change of perception, right, of seeing the wealth of people, right, as opposed to seeing them as refugees. The core aspects of Techfugees is really driven by the spirit of people and organizations coming together to kind of soak ourselves with values that we call drench. Each letter of the word drench represents a fundamental value that everybody in our global community embrace. And so we have D for dignity, R for respect, E for equality, N for neutrality, C for commitment, and H for humility. Now, these values, their 6 values, are so important because that is what not only creates a solidarity within our global community, but also draws magnetism to other organizations to come together and drive a collective force to work with people on the ground. So everything that we do in terms of looking at digital, how we harness technology and innovations on the ground in a frugal way with the refugees is on the basis that the human-centric design embraces the empathy, the underlying value, the sentiment of empathy, and the collective action by all the different organizations and people on the ground to make a difference. And I think that is fundamentally where I would say the traditional commercial models see a unique opportunity where they are looking to develop new products and new solutions. With the changing dynamics, it's very, very competitive now to bring out new solutions in the digital environment. Our product life cycles are so short, but there's a real opportunity to kind of harness the untapped talent, you could say, and elevate those unheard, unseen voices to the forefront to allow organizations who are bringing new solutions in a humanitarian way to be much more competitive, at the same time to develop their own brand ideal and to portray authenticity in the work that they do. So we're seeing some great examples of that, and we're looking forward to kind of accelerating our efforts. We're working with the private sector to enable that, and respecting the urgency of the actions that we need.
I think that's really, really interesting. And I just to bring Nowar back into it as well. I mean, how do you both see this? But Nowar first, how do you see this Techfugees model, and how do you think that's going to impact, or what does it tell us about the future of organizations and of leadership as a whole?
Yes, like I mentioned before, that working with the refugees will surprise you about how talented they are. So this is how Techfugees is working, just like giving trainings for those refugees to find their talents, maybe because they don't know their strength, like how I was before start working on my skills. So yes, we're giving trainings for those refugees and trying to find their strengths and their weaknesses, to work on their weaknesses first and lead them about how to work on with both of their strengths and weaknesses. And they're trying to link them with the market, with the right market, to just like open the door for more opportunities for them to survive. Some of them became just like freelancers to work outside and gaining some income to survive and help their families and beloved ones. And some of them became just like me, volunteers, and having their own small businesses, and they are working on their businesses. And yes, we'll continue working in this model to just like find those refugees, working on their skills, develop their skills, and link them with the right market that suit them, even if it's remotely or it's locally. So for me, this is a great model, especially after COVID-19, because COVID-19 opened this opportunity to work remotely. So yes, we're always trying to link some organizations that outside of the Middle East and trying to make deals with them to train our community and then link them with the organizations to work together.
It's another example, an extreme example, I guess, of what we've heard throughout the podcast, Zoe, throughout the 4 seasons that we've done. A podcast that was imagined outside of the pandemic and born within the pandemic, and that's the massive opportunity that it's brought to so many. Yes, it's been a really, really tough time. It's been so hard, and lots of people have lost their lives and loved ones. But the flip side of that is the opportunity that it's brought both to organisations, to leadership, and to visibility, I guess, of people that have so far been not invisible, but hard to see, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. I also just wanted to add, if I look back at Techfugees' heritage, it was all born out of a tech for good movement. And so over the last 6 years, there's been a lot of great learnings as to, what is good about tech and also what is bad for tech as well. And one of the interesting outcomes of all of this is that, we've now got an open source type of framework, which we call our guiding principles, which are equivalent, you could say, digital, sustainable development goal beacons, as it were, to help, entrepreneurs and innovators and even corporates to embrace those guiding principles from a human-centric perspective, to bring, good solutions that actually are most valuable to people at the end of the day. And the real opportunity here is that, we see innovations and entrepreneurship being two sides of the same coin. And it gives us the opportunity as an organization to migrate, I would say, from a tech for good environment to a much more tech for all, being much more inclusive. And I think what's fueling all of that is, and it goes back to what Nowar said, is that, at the end of the day, refugees and displaced people are incredibly investable. There's a lot of wealth of talent, which is untapped. They're able to see the negative spaces between objects that maybe you and I can't see. They are incredibly tenacious and the perseverance and the very, very strong backbone, which are amazing qualities for any entrepreneur to set up business, particularly in challenging times as we are today. But more importantly, they have the worldview. And with that, they're able to cross boundaries. So as an organization, what we're looking forward to doing is, continuing our efforts internationally to kind of break down the barriers of perception of refugees and displaced people, but then more importantly, harmonize and strengthen the narrative of the wealth of talent that's really out there within the displaced communities. As I say, every voice counts.
It's a massively inspirational story. And I'm just wondering, our listeners are made up of leaders from all sorts of different organizations, some corporate, some charity, some public sector. If they're inspired by this and if they would like to get in touch, how can they get involved and how can they start to connect with Techfugees?
Oh, great. Please, we need more hands on the deck. The nature of our work is, and the displacement issues is not going away, it's proliferating. Please feel free to reach out to us. The simple ways is send us an email at hello@techfugees.com or visit our website at techfugees.com.
I can also share my story here. When I contacted Techfugees at the first time, I went to the their website, and then went to LinkedIn and found I was trying to find who's working at Techfugees. So this is how I contacted Louis. Yeah, and the community or the volunteers and Techfugees all are welcoming, very, very warm welcoming. They will answer them immediately.
Not only inspirational, but fast response time as well. So is there anything else you want to add?
I just wanted to say thank you so much to Nowar and thank you to Raj for sharing your story today. I've been absolutely bowled over by the phenomenal work that you guys are doing at such a time of need. And it's just wonderful hearing about how the amazing resilience and innovation that comes with being a displaced person is being recognised, as well as that absolute well of talent that's out there. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Zoe, and thank you, Paul, for hearing our story. We're super delighted that we've been given the opportunity to share our stories, but we warmly welcome anybody who wants to come and work with us and help us in our cause.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
So thank you to Raj and Nowar for that interview. Zoe, anything that you took away from the conversation that we had with them?
Well, it meant a lot to me that they came along to have that conversation because, as I mentioned, I've got some personal experience in my family of refugees. So it was great to hear about the creativity and the innovation and the problem solving that people who've had that experience have, and how that can be a massive asset to the organisations that they work with. So I really heard that loud and clear from Raj and Nowar, and that was great, really inspiring.
Yeah, and we've already heard from a couple of people, including our own podcast editors, that they were inspired by listening to the interview and want to get in touch with Techfugees to see how they can help and how they can contribute. So I think there was a great call at the end there from Raj about how different organisations, different sectors can get involved in the work that Techfugees are doing. So if you're interested in finding out more, do get in touch with either us or directly with Raj and Nowar. They're both fairly active on LinkedIn, especially Nowar, so I'm sure you can find them there to have a bit of a conversation with.
We'll include links to that in the show notes.
Perfect. So thank you for listening to episode 2 of season 4. We'll be back next week with another episode, which will be with Kenneth Foreman and Steve Foster of London Marathon Events, which was a great conversation, really fun.
We're really excited about sharing that one because obviously this year was the first year they have run the marathon as a hybrid event. Everyone's talking about hybrid at the moment. So we're looking forward to sharing their story with all of you very soon. As usual, please do send us your feedback. We'd love to hear about anything that you feel you'll do differently after hearing from any of our guests on the series. You can share your plans, ideas, or questions with us on Twitter. We're at startsattethetop1, and you can email us at startsatthetoppodcast@gmail.com.
And yes, we'll stay on Twitter for at least the duration of this season. We'll probably still be there afterwards, but we will respond to your questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.